The following Nasdaq Behind the Bell podcast was recorded live at the 2017 NRF Annual Convention and Expo, retail's big show at the Jacob K. Javits Convention Center in New York City. Here are your Nasdaq hosts, Bradley Smith and Josh Matches.
Hey everybody, we are back at it again from the NRF Innovation Lab here at the NRF Big Show. You're tuned in to the Behind the Bell podcast brought to you by Nasdaq. For yourself, Brad Smith.
And Josh Matches.
And now we're currently joined by Mark Danchak, who's the managing partner at Carbon6 Ventures. Mark, great to have you here.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you very much.
How are you enjoying the conference so far?
It's an amazing venue. The Javits Center always does a great job with this, and the amount of people here is very impressive.
Yeah. It's amazing to see some of the big swarms of the international groups that we've seen coming through with a lot of the headsets on, and everybody's kind of getting their tidbits of information to take away from this conference.
Absolutely. I think that it's a perfect time for this conference because so many of the people who are dealing in this space are really trying to understand what is that intersection of technology and retail. Mm-hmm. And certainly the Amazons of the world and the Alibabas of the world have had a huge impact on retail. Brick and mortar retail is in a different position than it was in 25 years ago, right? And it's question of is how do they compete? How do the Amazons in the world compete? And then how does all this entire ecosystem that surrounds this entire retail industry play by those new rules?
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully the NRF Innovation Lab helps some of those brick and mortars catch up with the Amazons of the world.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So tell us about Carbon6 Ventures.
Yeah, so we're an early stage venture fund, so we focus on the seed and A rounds of companies as they're getting going, really kind of going from 0 to 1 is the big focus for us. And really helping them understand how do they attack the marketplace, how do they recruit people to their organization, how do they build a resilient organization and fund itself to get to that next level.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And now I know we talked a little bit about that many or a few of your investments are related to AI. Talk to us about where you see AI going as it pertains to retail.
Yeah, I think, it is really right now, the way I see it is AI or artificial intelligence is really about data gathering and utilization of data to actually understand more about your customer. And in many ways, what it feels like in the retail environment is it's organizations bear hugging the customer, really holding them close and trying to deepen that relationship. If you have a lot of data on a particular customer, you get to understand how that customer shops, the cadence, the desires, the interest of those customers. And you can then utilize that information, whether you're doing it on the website to make it a more personal experience. I think what you're going to see over the next decade really is very personalized experiences, whether you're in the store or you're on the website or you're on your mobile app. They're getting very smart about what you like and what you don't like, and and they surface to you those interesting things, whether they do it through visuals, whether they do it through display advertising that's there, whether they show you what people like you have bought and surface those type of things. And they're also, really kind of moving toward that a place where I represent to Nike that I'm a Nike fan, right, and that they can then utilize that data to bring other people who are like me into it or to bring me back to the brand.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting position that retail is in, is trying to figure all those different moving pieces
And you're
out.
seeing a lot of where they're using AI or machine learning to kind of understand some of the digital implications and move them into the brick and mortar experience. And I think that's one of the things that's really exciting to me is how are some of all of these insights going to actually impact experience for consumers, especially as we've been talking all day that Gen Z, they care most about a retail experience that really speaks to them.
Totally agree. I think that and that's really what a lot of this is, right? It's for Gen Z and for everyone else, right? I think that as you age up from Gen Z, what you find are people become more concerned about what you do with the data. And as you go down towards Gen Z, they don't care what you do with the data in many ways. They want you to be respectful, but they also want what they want. And they want to see what their friends are buying, and they want to understand, and they want to, really kind of at the intersection of fashion or retail or consumer technologies or all of those things, they really want a holistic view of where everything is and of course, where it's going.
Right. And I think, one thing that we haven't hit on is that, we've already talked about the brand affinities that a lot of these companies are looking to drive with Gen Z and a lot of the data that's available. But at the same time, Gen Z doesn't want to feel like they've been sold out by big data and a brand that harnesses those insights. They don't want to see, another brand reaching out to them with, hey, you should buy X, Y, and Z, and we got your information from such and such. Because I feel like that hurts the brand relationship, the brand-customer relationship a little bit more than it helps. I don't know. What are you saying from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think with the Gen Z, it's a lot about authenticity.
Right.
And they want to define what authenticity is.
Right.
They don't want Nike to define what the authenticity is. They want to define what authenticity is. And that authenticity, that message, that experience, and it's a lot about experiences. Mm-hmm. Whether those experiences are on Facebook or those experiences are real live experiences, those are in-store experiences, or those are visual experiences via the website or the mobile app. Mm-hmm. They want to decide what that is. Yeah. And you know what? We're living in a world where they get a lot of power to make those decisions. And they are, all of this that you see around us is being driven by that set of decision making and that thought process and that authenticity to drive what's good for me. Not just what's good for, size 12 shoes, 6'1", like whatever, but what's good for me. I like to run. I buy shoes every 6 months, kind of all of those things. Like, what more should I be doing? Should I be buying other stuff from outdoor? Should I be doing other stuff? And they're also, too, we're a little bit also dealing with the whole Zara situation, right? With the fashion and all of those things, right? So these brands that could have built up over years are now have to be built up over months, weeks, maybe a year, and then they kind of explode onto the marketplace. They're trying to wrestle with: do we go into retail? Do we stay over the top and just continue to sell via the internet? Because the cost structure doesn't allow us to do a lot of those things. So, and then of course the balance is the only way you can make that successful is if you can utilize social marketing to blow up the brand and really expose it to the world without having to spend billions of dollars to buy a Super Bowl ad. Yeah. That's kind of the situation they're in right now.
What are some of the startups or AI startups maybe specifically that you think will really start to impact the retail industry?
Well, I think I approach it from two different sides. I think there are a bunch of startups who are aligning themselves with the big players like the Googles and the IBMs and the Oracles of the world to utilize some of that horsepower and the data to really find things. For example, we have a company out of the West Coast called Pixley who's doing phenomenal things within, user-generated content and really understanding what's in that photograph, what's the metadata behind that photograph, how can you do more things with that. We have another company down in Philadelphia who's doing things not in retail, but in the energy space, which is really focusing on what is the information being generated by energy companies, and then what can you do with that to provide better infrastructure, to provide better energy to people, more consistent flow, to really worry about the situations that are happening on the ground, whether it's cyber threats or other things. Those are some of the companies that we're working with to explore different opportunities, and all of them to some degree or another, and I think this is going to be a very common theme for the next couple of years, is people are going to want to know what your AI strategy is. How are you utilizing artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, any of those other tools and functionalities that are out there, and really everyone's starting at the same place pretty much. There's a couple leaders that are out there, the big companies, the Googles and the IBMs and so forth, but there's a lot of other companies that are utilizing the tool sets that are available out, whether it's TensorFlow from Google or it's Watson from IBM, to really do and ask questions. And that's, over the next couple decades, that's what the genius of being the human will be in this whole equation, will be, am I asking the right questions? Right. Because there's a lot of data out there, but what do you do with all the data? We call it digital exhaust. Like, there's so much data that's being out there, but how do you grab a hold and figure out what's the important elements of that data? And that's one of the places that AI and deep learning, machine learning, and sort of all these different flavors of the same thing are really focused on doing.
So as an early stage investor then, how do you go about evaluating some of the companies in these first stages of their life cycle and kind of building up their brand and say, this is worth putting our, our investment and our capital within?
100% always comes back down to the people. Those people who are gritty and visionary and are able to they have a big vision for what they want to do, and they have deep relationships with people, whether they're scientists or they're at Google or others, that really can help them fulfill that promise. And they've wrapped around them a team that has intellectual heft and expertise and the grit to see this thing through. I think that's the big focus. It always comes back, there's a million great ideas in the world. What there aren't is a million great teams to go and execute on those ideas. Right. And I think, that's the thing you guys see every single day, right? In the big companies in the world, those teams that can execute and are resilient and really know their game plan, they're the ones that keep coming back to ring the bell, And I think that's what we look for, is we look for companies who are doing very interesting things at the cusp of technology or social issues, combining that with a set of expertise within technology, combining that with an ability to get through all of these incredibly hard problems that small companies have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. They usually don't fail because they made the wrong thing. They often fail sort of a death by 1,000 cuts, or small choices, or choices not made. And that's what our job is, to help them get through those choices, help them define the different paths, and then let them make the choices, but make the choice and move forward, and then keep shifting as you're working on your different strategy that's out there.
So we hear a lot of VCs, particularly when they come in to talk to us, they always say about the strength of the management team. What happens when they have, how do you weigh when maybe they don't have the strongest management team, but they have a really brilliant product? Right. Because it kind of brings in like the Mark Zuckerberg thing, which is that he's a genius, right? And now very eloquent, but in the beginning, he wasn't the most eloquent, and it was a real gamble to recognize that what he had was genius.
Yes, I totally agree. So I think we see it in two different ways. A lot of times, the product or service is brilliant and is well executed, and their engineering is very, very strong. But it's the business side that helps propel this thing, right? One can overwhelm the other for a period of time. You can get by with an incredibly sexy product, lots of growth, and all of those things. Inherently, you're going to have to find the balance. So we tend to like at least two co-founders. Ideally, both of them have technical backgrounds, but one has raised their hand and said, I want to be the business person. The other one has raised their hand and said, I want to be the engineering, technical person, R&D, whatever those things are. And that pair then works together in a cohesive unit, but they understand each other. They agree to move forward in this realm. So I think that's the challenge for companies. Now, the untalked about thing within venture is there's a heck of a lot of co-founder divorces, because that relationship is stressed. And someone raises their hand again and says, I'm tapping out. I can't do this. I'm not working 24 hours a day. I'm not, I'm away from my family.
Do they walk away with nothing at that point?
It depends. And that's the thing, is if it's structured in the right way, they walk away with something less than they had defined, because there's a vesting schedule, and if everything's done properly, you have those types of things. Yeah. But more importantly, here is your partner who you both agreed to put a ton of energy in these things. You've hired people, you have responsibilities to people, and they've said, for whatever reason, I'm burnt out. I can't do it. They're a year in, 2 years in, or whatever. And so our job as good investors is really to help them through that process, and to make sure that the team around them feels, and it should be an honest discussion. The team around them feels like they can get this thing to the next level. They have the expertise, and if they don't have the expertise and they don't have a resource, they have to bring in that person to do it. And what we find is lots of these companies have incredible engineering, brilliant ideas. Now it's the execution of engineering kind of going a little wild and not actually getting a product done and getting it shipped, or the other side of the equation of, you got to sell this thing. You got to get someone in and convince someone to take $1 out of their pocket and give it to you, and then do that 1 million times over. And I think you have to find both of those things, and it's very rare to find it in one person like Mark or others that are out there, Evan or whomever. like where you really get kind of all of those things in one, and then you get this incredible passion and driving force to get the company to that level. But it's always a balance, and our job as investors is to try to help to hold that balance, to educate, to add to the conversation, is what we look to do.
And to keep that partnership together, it seems, right? Because I mean, you're betting at the end of the day on either the engineering guy and the business guy, and them keeping their partnership together.
Yeah, and whether the woman who's the CEO and the man who's the technology, or the woman who's the technologist, the man, it is a cohesive unit. That said, it happens a lot, and it's about how do you then circle around them the right sort of expertise and ability to get through that situation. And adversity makes good sailors, right? Poor waters make good sailors, right? And I think that's what this does. And even whether you're a first-time founder, you're a sixth-time founder, it's different every time because the people are different, the market is different, the land that's shifting underneath you is different. So you encounter lots of different things, and ideally you want to keep them together. You want to have that conversation. You want to have that sit down with them. It says, okay, how did we get here? Yeah. Where are we going forward? And if people really want to opt out, you've got to let them opt out and figure out how to rescue that situation. And it's usually someone takes the leadership role and says, look, we got in this to do this. We believe in it. We're going to make this happen, whether you're here or not here. So wish you well. Doesn't always work that simply, but oftentimes it does in this space.
That's really interesting advice, and I think a lot of clarity that I certainly don't hear from a lot of VCs. So really, really special. Thank you for sharing that.
That's my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for your insights here today on about the Behind the Bell podcast, Mark. It's been great to kind of talk about what you look for in certain companies leading up to their real growth phases. So it's something that we haven't really hit on throughout the conference thus far. So great to have your valued insights here today.
Great. Thank you, guys. It was a real pleasure. Good to see you guys again, and happy to help anytime I can.